As a kid that grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s, my life was pretty much molded by the stuff I saw on TV. Now, Canadian television is an absolute goddamn trip, one that the far more talented YouTuber Nitro Rad has already covered. Seriously, check out his video. I mean, not that he needs me to promote his stuff, I just legit love his coverage of nostalgic Canadian cartoons. Even the stuff I didn't watch that was on Teletoon. But yeah, growing up in Canada, my after-school life saw me watching a ton of the shows on YTV. But none ever hit me quite as hard as Dragon Ball Z. While not Canadian made, it was Canadian dubbed, and if you ask me, and nobody did, yeah, the Ocean dub is a lot better than the Funimation dub, at least, compared to how when the Funimation dub first started. And had Funimation not had a chance to do multiple redos, their dub would not be as fondly remembered. But, getting off topic, Funimation hate aside, Dragon Ball Z aired every weeknight at 8:30 p.m. right after Dragon Ball. Sadly, that was actually my bedtime, so I often had to coerce my parents into letting me stay up a little later so I could watch a half hour of absolutely fuck all happening. And maybe they'd decide to fight a little. But, and you know where this is fucking going because it goes there every goddamn time, I had a friend, let's call him Mike. No, not because I'm trying to hide his identity or anything, but that's his name, kind of. Anyways, Mike had a GameCube before I did, and whenever I'd go over to his house, I played the shit out of it. And for the longest time, he only owned one game. Take a guess. Take one guess. I'll bet you don't know it's the title. It's the title of the video. Now, Budokai was very far from being the very first Dragon Ball Z game. In fact, it was probably like third or fourth actually released in the West, depending on whether or not you count Dragon Power. I don't. But it was the first game to really try and capture the feeling, the essence, the lifeblood of what Dragon Ball Z is. But it kind of begs two questions. A, was the game good when it came out? And B, it's 21 years old, or it's going to be pretty soon. Has it aged well? I mean, 21 years is a long time, and I can think of fighting games from 10 years ago that haven't aged well. Mortal Kombat 2011. And you know what? Fuck it, let's just get right into it. Play Dragon Ball Z Budokai. This one's for you, Mike. You're not dead, I just felt like saying that. In the event you've been living under a rock for the past few decades, Dragon Ball Z is a sequel to Dragon Ball, an anime and manga series about legally distinct Superman coming to Earth and going on mystical adventures with his friends to stop, an evil terrorist cell, a three-eyed monk, a demonic slug man who's really an alien, just whatever sort of thing that Akira Toriyama felt like throwing at him. Z is about Goku as an adult. He's got a wife and kids and probably has to pay taxes, and has to go to space to fight Space Hitler to avenge the deaths of his people, then okay, fine. You clicked on this video, I think it's safe to assume you are somewhat familiar with the source material. And if you're not, then, I don't know, maybe see if you can work out a thing with Disney to make a live-action movie of it, because that certainly isn't a deal-breaker for them. Wait, what was I reviewing again? Oh yeah, Dragon Ball Z Budokai. For starters, the game has three main modes. Duel, which is your standard versus mode, fight against the computer or a friend, if you have them, I don't. World Tournament is, and most interesting of all, at least back to me back in 2003, was Story Mode. But the game doesn't fill in too many gaps, serving as a very abridged
Vegeta! What? I can fly.
No, not that kind of abridged version of the show. Only the major plot points are hit, everything that's filler is left out. What you get is the entire first three arcs of the show condensed into roughly 5 hours. I really like this approach, and each chapter is bookended with title cards to make the game feel that much more like the show it's trying to imitate. It really does the job well. This is driven even further by the fact that each major arc begins with a saga-appropriate recreation of the show's iconic opening. Granted, I literally never heard this specific song prior to this game, but it's pretty fun. It's cringe, but it's a banger. Now, by the year 2022, we can pretty much recite the entire plot of Dragon Ball Z verbatim, backwards, in our sleep, in Pig Latin. But put yourself in the shoes of a kid from 2003. In Canada, Dragon Ball Z came on at specific times. and even then there was no guarantee that you'd actually catch it. Some days it just didn't air, or sometimes YTV ran out of episodes, so they had to restart at fucking Raditz, and you had to watch the whole goddamn show over again until you eventually got to a part that you haven't seen, and then they ran out of episodes and you'd have to restart all over again. This happened like 6 times. But this game kind of filled in some of the gaps for me during these breaks, as they happened quite a few times. And you know what, let's talk about the presentation a little more, before we actually really dig into the gameplay. What I'm playing here is the Xbox 360 remaster. Now, I do own it on the GameCube, but opted for the cleaner textures and slightly more familiar controls for this one. Now, Dragon Ball Z Budokai looks exactly the same way I remember the show looking as a kid, only in 3D. And as a kid who played Final Bout and lived to tell about it, this game was also the first to really get the look of the series down pat. All of the colors just about look right, and the models are nice and really detailed. I like how the characters' physiques are actually sculpted as opposed to the somewhat painted-on method later Dragon Ball Z games would use. It looks like Goku's actually got a 6-pack of abs as opposed to, just having the flat airbrush texture for them. Visually, this game is an absolute treat, and everything is damn near spot on. This is helped by the fantastic sound design, as all of the punches, blasts, flying, landing, your kamehamehas, and your whatevers all sound pretty close to the show. And the music, oh my god, so nostalgic. I mean, okay, I was robbed of it for this playthrough, as the HD version uses tracks from Raging Blast and Ultimate Tenkaichi. But the original score in the GameCube version is filled with tasty, face-melting metal and screaming guitars that get you pumped as fuck! Okay, I know the composer got hit with plagiarism claims, but honestly, you really have to listen, and I mean really listen and look for it, to hear any similarities between the Budokai score and Stratovarius' work. And honestly, if fucking Doom and Guilty Gear can downright just steal entire guitar riffs from metal bands people have actually heard of, then I see no issue with taking a little bit of inspiration, if he even did, from a band nobody has heard of. And all of a sudden, I just pissed off all 6 Stratovarius fans. Now, the only bad part of the sound in this game is, honestly, the dub. Okay, going to put away my massive, throbbing hate boner for Funimation, maybe for a paragraph, but the dub in this game is not good. Like, at all. I'm sure all the people except Sean Schemmel and Chris Sabat that voiced in this are fine people, but nobody is bringing their A game. A lot of the dialogue is stilted and awkwardly delivered by actors who just don't really get the characters, and I mean, that's true for all of the Funimation dubs of the series, but the writing is great, honestly. I actually like Goku being as written kind of a superhero type like the early dub, and this game made him out to be. Instead of the walking flanderization he kind of devolved into around the time of Kai and Super. But nobody is doing a good job here, least of all Sean Schemmel. He just sounds like he's reading off a script, and I know a thing or two about that.
If I don't stop Frieza, he'll ravage the entire universe. One shot left, the Spirit Bomb. I have to borrow the spirit of the planet Namek and all its creatures. Please, give me your strength!
You really are a bothersome little pest, and I've had enough! I'll turn you and this planet into dust!
It's time!
What? No! You can't stop me! No!
Now, I know he's a human piece of shit, and his tweets have made that blindingly clear, but he can act, just not as Goku, and definitely not here.
If you follow this punk Jenko, all you're ever going to have is a short life of fear and violence that leads to a toe tag at the city morgue. You know it's true. I can see it in your eyes. But it's not too late. you can choose a different future. You can walk away. Just walk away.
My other problem is that so much of the cast is voiced by Christopher Sabat. So, just like in the show, any scene with Piccolo and Vegeta just sounds like Yamcha with strep throat talking to Yamcha suffering from constipation. And yeah, while the Canadian dub had the same problem as Scott McNeil is hammy and fun, while Chris Sabat is just grating on the ears.
Thanks to you two, I've come to know that I have a home other than this one in outer space. But this has been my home. And no man comes into another man's house and starts telling him what to do. You're out of line. We're not here to bow down to your demands. We're here to fight. So go ahead and do whatever it is that you came here to do.
I want to thank you. Because of you, I now know that I come from the planet Namek. But this is my planet now, and no one is going to tell me what to do with it. So back off! We're not here to bow down to your demands. We're here to fight! So go ahead and do whatever it is you came here to do.
He's out of line, but he's right. It's great.
It's like comparing, say, Nicolas Cage to Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo is a bad actor and boring, and Nicolas Cage is just a bad actor. Never boring.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z! Huh?
But enough about how the game looks and sounds. I have not yet talked about the actual important part, the gameplay. And honestly, that's because Budokai's gameplay is probably the second least remarkable thing about it besides the dubbing. The gameplay can be described as a vastly dumbed-down Virtua Fighter. It's kind of a trend on this channel. You have punch, kick, block, and a button for shooting pew-pews. You can string these together to form combos. My main problem stems from how samey the cast all feels. Now, in a game like Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, wow, I had to take a breath there. Having characters that feel similar is fine because, there's over 100 of them. Like, you want somebody to code and program 150 unique playing characters? Get the fuck out. But Budokai has about 18 characters. I didn't count, I'm just guessing. And so many of them share animations, combo strings, and special moves. For example, everyone has the same goddamn Ki Blast spam move, with the same inputs. There's next to no variety. Now, it makes sense that someone like Gohan would share moves used by both Goku and Piccolo, but why do Frieza, Raditz, Nappa, Piccolo, and Android 17 all have several combos in common? To make matters worse, specials can only be done at the end of combos, so you can't just pop a Kamehameha off, you have to combo into it. And a lot of times you'll do the right inputs only to either be interrupted, or you pressed a certain button one time too many. Or not enough. There's almost no feeling of control when it comes to doing specials, and it really does bring the experience down a fair bit. The gameplay is also a little on the slower side. As far as 3D Dragon Ball games went back then, this was a massive improvement over Final Bout. You'll notice I say that a lot, but compare it to the Super Nintendo titles, and you'll find that the 16-bit games do a far better job of imitating the anime in terms of sheer speed. There is, however, this little hyper-fighting skirmish mechanic where if you have two strong attacks clash, your characters start flailing limbs and look like they're having seizures. It looks really damn cool, but there isn't really a strong visual indicator of who's winning. And it all just boils down to mashing the buttons and twirling the D-pad like a Zangief player on a cocktail of cocaine and pre-workout. I also entirely forgot this mechanic was even here most of the time, as it's super situational and doesn't really do much besides look cool. And specials also cost keys, so you need to make sure you have enough to do certain moves. This would be like if in Street Fighter if Hadokens took meter. And to make this even worse, specials also aren't that powerful. Not to the extent that they need to be nerfed by adding a meter requirement to them. The inputs are the biggest issue though, with basic moves like the Kamehameha being locked behind a 4-punch combo string ending with the energy button. This also means you can't really combo out of a lot of moves and have to use them as a combo ender. And of course, half the time your opponent will just block it regardless of whether or not your last punch hit. And almost all specials are negative on block, meaning you're likely to eat the back of Krillin's hand all because the AI suddenly remembered where the guard button was. The one really good thing this game did is introduce in-game transformations. Yeah, this is the first Dragon Ball game to actually have that. In past Dragon Ball games, Super Saiyan Goku was tucked away in his own character slot separate from every other Goku. And you had to do this for every form that he had. He still had the same moveset, but for whatever reason, the thought of making him transform mid-fight just never occurred to the developers. Transformations require you to build up to a certain level of ki to use. That makes sense. I mean, in the show, they have to charge up before transforming, so it's a good way to make it feel more like the show. But of course, because this game is a goddamn monkey's paw, and everything good has to come with something bad, I present you this. The bad is that if you fall below a certain ki level and then get your ass knocked straight down, you go back down to whatever transformation requires your current ki level. And many times in story mode, you will start off in a form, but have less ki than the required amount for it, meaning getting knocked down will cause you to lose the form and probably the fight. And this happens ad nauseam when you're fighting Cell. Now you might remember that I mentioned two other modes, Duel and World Tournament. What about them? Well, Duel, as I've stated before, is your run-of-the-mill versus mode. Grab a buddy and beat the shit out of them. But World Tournament is a little more interesting. It allows you to fight in an 8-man tournament with the grand prize being, of course,
Money!
What's the money used for? You use them to buy skills from an insensitive racial stereotype. Skills are things that range from stat boosts to specials to transformations, or if you're a total dick like I am, a fucking heart disease that saps the health of both you and your opponent. And again, if you're a total dick like me, you can also put the vaccine on your fighter and laugh as the disease slowly whittles your opponent's health bar down to a quarter. The game offers a ton of neat customization options that allow you to create unique variants of your favorite characters, and it did all of this over 10 years before NetherRealm Studios ever attempted it. The customization is actually really damn neat, but if you want to have your Goku turn all, neon banana hair, then you have to equip every transformation leading up to it, which means that in order to go Super Saiyan, you have to put on 3 versions of Kaioken, then Super Saiyan, taking away 4 of your 7 slots. And to make matters worse, things like throws are not universal mechanics and have to be equipped like any other skill. This makes it so you don't have quite as many options as you should for customization, as you'll probably want a transformation for buffs and a throw for unblockable damage, which means that for some characters, you have 2 slots for other customizable stuff. In Mr. Popo's shop, there are mystery capsules, which are A, expensive, and B, totally random. There is the off chance they will yield a Dragon Ball, which, you know how it works. They allow you to unlock a breakthrough capsule, which gives you access to every skill a character has, although it takes up all 7 slots, meaning you can't equip things like items. The other thing I really dislike about this shop is that in order to unlock 2 secret characters, you have to buy them from Mr. Popo. And it's totally random on if they'll show up in his shop. This means you will spend minutes entering it, waiting for it to load, leaving it, and going right back in hopes that he will have the capsule you're looking for. Sometimes he'll have it, and other times he's just trying to peddle coats. Mr. Popo's probably got like a wife and 5 kids at home. He needs that zenny. The game even has 2 secret characters in the form of Mark, and after learning that Mr. Satan's name is in fact Mark, I refuse to call him anything else. As well as Gohan's superhero persona, the Great Saiyaman, who Mike told me was actually Goten, but he was Polish, and I know how spotty some foreign dubs of anime can be. Like, really, the Arabic dub of Digimon wants me to believe that the evolutions are actually the older siblings of the rookie-level forms that all live in some secret, never-seen-on-screen base. Yeah, fuck right off. And honestly, both of them are probably the most fun characters to play as. I didn't unlock them in this playthrough, but Saiyaman has some neat specials, and Mark's just happy to be here. And really, that's all there is to Dragon Ball Z Budokai. Replaying it for the purpose of this review unlocked a lot of nostalgic memories, but But once I took off the rose-tinted glasses, I started to see a bunch of flaws I either just overlooked because I was just excited to play a game based off of a show I loved, or I just didn't know any better. I mean, I actually really liked Final Bout as a kid, so clearly my standards were lower than Joe Biden's approval ratings. The story mode is nice and short, capturing the feeling of the show while cutting off a lot of the fat. It does its best to recreate iconic scenes from the anime, and the key word here is tries. Clearly a lot of effort went into making the story mode feel like the show it's supposed to be retelling. The major problem comes from the gameplay itself. It's just too awkward and clunky, and really the actual game part of this Dragon Ball Z video game doesn't feel like Dragon Ball Z whatsoever. The fighting is just too janky and slow to accurately mimic the source material, and honestly the hyper fighting mechanic is just too weird and awkward to actually be any fun. The customization mechanic seems interesting on paper, and it would be better expanded in later games, both in the Budokai series and eventually the Xenoverse games, but here it just feels like it's missing something, a je ne sais quoi. A lot of things that just should be a part of a character's repertoire just aren't, and having to sacrifice more than half of my slots for transformations brings whatever excitement this system would have just straight down. The roster all feeling so similar is also kind of another bummer, and makes it so I can't really recommend the game to either fans of the series or just to fans of fighting games in general. And again, the dubbing sucks, but my critique on that earlier in the video was mostly about talking smack about two voice actors who really don't need my help looking bad. But believe me, half of the performances here wouldn't pass in a high school stage production of The Force Awakens. Yeah, all in all, the game is definitely not as good as I remember it. It wasn't even really good at the time because I can go back and replay the Super Butoden games, and they represent the show a little bit better in some ways. But it does allow you to play as Vegeta in his pink Badman shirt. And I'll give it a pass based on that alone, 10 out of 10.